ears. All right, now that we're recording, at least on the audio, I want to talk to you guys a little bit about the final. Now, you know it's going to be a debate. We just don't know what we're debating yet. I told you guys there are a couple of options. So I want to decide on what cases you want to do first, and then we'll talk about how we want to logistically go about them. Here are the options. Marker. We have First Amendment and social media issues generally. The cases are O'Connor v. Ratcliffe. These are all in front of the Supreme Court being heard right now. Reed. That's terrible. Oh, I think it's O'Connor and Ratcliffe. These are companion cases. And Vidal v. Elster. So these are all on the First Amendment, right? So if you like First Amendment, you want to talk about that, that would be a great option. We should pick one of those. We need two total. Second Amendment and intimate partner violence. That case is U.S. versus Rahim. And then finally, we have the Fifth Amendment. And I'm going to call second prosecutions. It's really a question of double jeopardy, but that's what second prosecutions are. That case is, of course, out of our beloved South. Like Elrath, sorry, it's not a G. I can't read my own handwriting. Elrath versus Georgia. All right. I can't give you all the briefs of these cases. These are generally what they're about. We have to pick two. Generally speaking, give me some feedback. What are we more interested in?
Is it the O'Connor and Ratcliffe versus Garnier case?
Correct, it is. So if you're reading about that one, that is the case. There'll be two different debates. Teams A, B, we'll do this over here in just a few minutes. There'll be team A and B. And team B, they'll have the same case and they'll be taking two different sides of it. And team C and D will take a different case and argue the other sides of it. Now, big thing is, I will not tell you until you get into class which side you have to argue. So you need to come to class prepared all around to discuss this case. Then we'll do a coin toss. Whoever wins the coin toss gets to decide what they want to do, whether they want to argue in support or in opposition. So that's classic debate rules. That's how we're going to do it. So help me decide the first case that we're going to take. So let's just go by issue. Show of hands, who is more interested in First Amendment than the others? Couple. All right. Like 5 or 6 of you. Who is more interested in the Second Amendment and IPV? 5. What about the Fifth Amendment and second prosecutions? 3. Okay, so it looks like a lot of us are interested in at least one of these. So we'll do one of these and maybe one more of these. Is that okay? Okay. So, any preference or on these particular ones? No one has one? Okay, let me go back on to what does it look like? Those of you who did not want to do First Amendment and instead preferred IPV and or Fifth Amendment, between those two, which would you pick? You gotta pick one. Second Amendment. Okay. I also think this is a pretty cut and dry issue, so I don't think there's got to be a good argument here, but it is very relevant to what we do in this class. So essentially, the state of Georgia wants to prosecute someone a second time after they were already found not guilty. Double jeopardy forbids that. They're trying to do it anyway. I don't know how this got to the Supreme Court or why 4 people on the court voted to take it up. You probably have to ask the 4 people who voted, but it wasn't me. So we'll do that. We'll do either First Amendment or that. So now Let's kind of give me some, who's on this, who would rather be first on your social media, do your name, shout out your name. Spell it. Fast, I'm not ready. Tony. Tony? Who else? Yeah. Anybody else? All right, Keisha, I saw a hand raised. Yeah, shout it out for me. Zach. Anybody else? All right, so then I assume Second Amendment is Wesley. Emily. Madison.
Adrian.
Huh? Huh? You don't get to just opt out of this. Also, you did great in the last debate. Why are you so?
I didn't say that.
Oh.
I said killer team already.
Oh, killer team. I was like,
Don't attack me.
you cannot lie and sit back in the corner of that room and say that you do not poke the entire time. Madison, who else? I'm so sorry. Adrian. Thomas. Jennifer. Am I missing anyone? Brian, you want to go over here? Now am I missing anyone?
Nathan, can I go back to the first, please?
Yes, you can.
Thank you.
Nathan. Now am I missing anyone? Okay. So I'm gonna randomly divide, or we'll just do by who you're sitting closest with. Or do you want to pick your teams? These are team A and team, like it doesn't really matter, but you need two teams. So I need two out of these, two groups of three. So Madison and Emily want to be on the team. Oh my God. I told you last time, you're not allowed to do this. You are not allowed to intimidate the other students. You are not allowed.
Intimidation if it doesn't work. Did it work? Exactly.
It is still intimidation, even if it didn't work. That's not how it works, Emily. We're gonna have to talk about this more before law school. And that's not with respect to how well you do in law school. That has everything to do with the legal standards. So then we have a team of, so that's, we'll call this team A. Team B will be Jennifer, Brian, Adrian, and Thomas. Are we okay with that? We're all good there? Okay, it is your responsibility to coordinate with your team members. You can work all together. So what will happen at the end of the debate, if you've read the syllabus, is that you will give me a reflection on essentially what happened during the debate, and then what you think based on what we argued and what we heard as far as argument, the court is likely to decide. It's a brief reflection. The other thing you do is you will submit a review of your teammates. You don't have to submit a review of every single teammate, but I need to know what happened, which means that's the place for you to tell me confidentially, this person never did anything. We never heard from them on email. We never talked to them. They showed up. They didn't have anything prepared. That's where you tell me, because I can't dock your grades and I want you to succeed as a whole, as a group. And if somebody hindered that process, they don't deserve the same grade that you got. Do you agree? Oh, great. That's generally why people hate group work. But since we're doing it, I want there to be a accountability process also, so that you know your teammates can snitch on you. So if you don't show up and support them, or at least let me know why you can't show up and support them so that I can communicate that to them, that something is going on, you're not going to do as well. Okay. All right. Now let's go over to the First Amendment and social media, the case of which we will decide on later. So Second Amendment IPV, this is your case, US versus Rahim. So you're responsible for looking it up, looking up everything about it, making your argument. I will post last year's second debate, or last semester's second debate, on Canvas, so you can watch and see how this process takes place and kind of prepare yourself. First and foremost, prepare yourself for the arguments, one side or the other. Secondly, prepare yourself that I'm going to interrupt with questions like an appellate judge would the entire time. Also, don't try what a group last semester tried, which is, respectfully, Your Honor, can we pause and not have any questions for the next 5 minutes and get our argument done? No, I ask questions when I want to. I am the judge. I ask questions when I want to. I love, I don't think Will would kill me for saying this. I love Will. His tenacity in asking that question was spot on. Definitely wasn't in trouble for it, but it was like, no, not how law works. I get to interrupt at any point that I want to. The other team will not be able to interrupt you at all. You don't argue back and forth with each other. You make your argument. I ask questions of you. The other team makes argument. Now you can respond to what the other team said and say, in their argument, they said this, that's wrong, but you cannot directly talk to them or attack them. Or use any other form of intimidation tactics during the debate.
I didn't though.
You did it. You did very good last time. All right, so on this one, I need a team A and I need a team B. Anybody want to tell me who you want to work with?
I wanna work with Tiana.
Jarkeisha and Tiana want to be on the team together. Anybody else want to join this dynamic duo? I will. Oh. Anybody else? You and, oh, you and, oh, so you and the Sim want to be together. Okay. So they put you all on the same, both on the same team, that might be too many. I can't remember how these and those. So I need to know where Zach and Nathan want to go.
Go with, first.
Nathan, all right, Zach. Yep, this is your team. Does everybody understand who they're supposed to reach out to? And who they're supposed to talk to? Am I missing anyone? Great. All right. Now, those of you who are on this team. Emily,
What are the people that aren't here today?
people who aren't here today, I will contact and ask if they either want to join a team and present in person, or if they would like to do the alternative assignment. For those of you who do not know, the alternative assignment is that you don't participate in the debate, but you have to write a much longer paper where you kind of argue both sides of the issue for me, like you would have in class, and then you write me the same thing that everybody else does. So it's very, very similar. It's just you talk and you have your group mates, or it's just you and your own research and the arguments, but you're essentially preparing the same ways. Okay, so I'll give them the option for everyone who was not here today. So for those of you who are here today, let's talk about which of these you want to address. Does anyone have the, like, is pulling these up and looking at them just so I can refresh my memory on the issues, the specific issues? They all have to do with the First Amendment and various aspects of social media. Did you like the first one that you read?
No.
No?
No, Connor.
Remind me, what's O'Connor and Ratcliffe?
So Michelle O'Connor, Ratcliffe
Mm-hmm.
created a personal Facebook and Twitter page,
Uh-huh.
with their official titles separate from their public official work page.
Oh, yes, these get into the fun. Is a public official statement like part of their record, and can it be considered blocking First Amendment to block someone, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was on their personal Facebook page.
But you're a public figure, right?
It was a separate page from their public official.
These are great debate questions. These are great debate issues. So that's the question. That's the issue, is there is a lot of law that says essentially if you are a public figure, especially if you are an appointed public figure, that when you speak in a public space, you are assumed to be speaking in your capacity as an elected official. Is Twitter, Instagram, Facebook all public spaces? You bet your ass they are. They have been held to be public spaces, just like sidewalks, just like public universities, just like schools, just like parks. They are public spaces. So if you are in a public space, and that is your personal page, even if it's still your personal page, and you're making a statement, let's ask employees. If an employee posted something on their private Facebook page, can they be fired for it?
Yes.
So what about a public official? If they post something that's super offensive, should they be able to get held accountable for it? Even if it's their personal page. That's the debate question in O'Connor. You need to refresh my memory on Lynn Keith Britain. Real quick. Whoever has their phone and computer out. Lindke, Lindk, hyphen Freed, Freed. All right, so this is also about, if they're essentially, it's kind of very similar to like when President 45 decided to block people on social media, whether or not they're allowed to do that, because that constitutes violating the ability to redress grievances.
Yeah, about the comments.
So that's about what public officials can do even on their public page. This is about public officials can do on their private page. And someone remind me what the doll is about.
Without a registered trademark, mark contains criticism of a government official or public figure for public figures violating the free speech policy.
And a little more complicated. I'm gonna eliminate that one from consideration because it's trademark law and that's too complicated for us to get too much into. So between O'Connor and Ratcliffe, does a public official's private Facebook page get them in trouble? That's a very dumbed down version of that question. And a very dumbed down version of this question, can people like President 45 block people, remove comments on their official state government pages? Between those two, teams A and team B, team C and team D, you don't get to opine on this. A and B, what do you want to do? Second one, I'm hearing some preference here for the second one. What about the other? What about you guys?
Oh, come on.
You guys want the first one?
You want the one?
So you got teams A and team B have to agree because you're arguing different sides of the case. Okay, but we can't do two separate ones, so if you, are you guys okay with doing the first one? Because you're gonna be taking two sides of the issue,
Oh, okay.
but you guys wanna do the first one, you guys are more inclined with the second one.
Oh, something else.
Yeah, you can only pick one,
Oh, it don't matter.
or you don't care?
Yeah.
Okay, so first you had your speed, but now we don't care.
No, I thought we missed.
Oh, you had to, oh, I'm sorry, you're misunderstanding.
Yeah,
You
I
had to.
misunderstood, so I'm.
Does anyone have a point?
Um,
I'm not even going like, I'm not doing that. Someone just tell me which one you guys want to do. First person to say it wins.
Stay on.
Okay, I heard O'Connor. I heard O'Connor. I don't know if that was first, but I heard it. So teams A and teams B, you will be arguing O'Connor versus or O'Connor Ratcliffe. You'll be, again, if you are in the team, you have to be prepared to argue both sides of the case until you get in here, and I will assign you one. That ensures that you are properly prepared. Same thing, US versus Raheem, you need to be prepared to argue both sides, and then once you get in here, I will assign you one. Do you want to be on a team or do you want to do the alternative assignment? You want to be on a team? Okay, so this is team debating the issue of the Second Amendment and interpersonal or intimate partner violence. And these sets of teams are arguing the First Amendment and social media. Preference for your issue. First Amendment social media, then I'm going to assign you the boys team. Very sorry about that. You guys better be nice because the other team already has 4 members, if that's okay. So your boys team right there, Abdul, Bossum, and Zach, they're all right there. All right, Hannah. The same one, same link that you last semester for fun. I think it's 3 to 5 pages. So you're gonna stick with the alternative class. Emily.
Oh, are you gonna send me this?
Am I got, no, I do not announce winners. That's not how this works. It's a debate, it's we can talk about, all right, so that gets us into the next question. Let's address how we're going to logistically accomplish a debate. Options 1 and options 2. Okay, we already have this figured out. You guys know who you are, right? You know your teams. We'll move on from that. Here is option 1. Final, which is set for December 13th. From 1 to 3 p.m. From 1 to 2, teams A and B will debate. From 2 to 3, teams C and D will debate. There is no debriefing. There are no treats. We don't have time. Sorry about it. But you get a long time to prepare for the final. Second option is on 12/4, teams A and B go. On 12/6, the last day of class, teams C and D go. Then on 12/13, the day of the final, we all get together and have a debriefing, where we can talk about who we think won and what the merits of their arguments were, but not announce a winner, and treats. You will have either way until December 13th at midnight to submit your reflection from the debate. So it's not due, even if you guys decide you want to do it here, it's not due until midnight this night. Either way. So, Jennifer,
Does that only have to be one page?
the reflection, I believe, is 1 to 2 pages, so. Yeah. Absolutely. All the other students who are not, and also if we do decide on this day, or like, whatever way we decide, you are allowed to say, be a silent observer, if you are not actively participating in time. You can give feedback after, if you would like. I generally give a lot of feedback after, if you want to stay around for that, so that is something that I think we should do. Then we'll have to go with you on this thing, so let's vote. Hand only, no commentary, just tell me your preference. Do we prefer option 1? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 5 total. We would prefer option 2. That's more than 5. All right, so we're going with option 2. Which does mean you have less time to prepare. Now, I know you're thinking, that sucks, I wanted more time to prepare. In law school, we do this fun thing where if we know we've hamstrung you with something, like you're gonna have to do it soon, or you're the guinea pig, we give more lenience. So it's kind of smart of you guys to choose 12-4 and 12-6, because I won't have expected more of you. If you have all of the finals and all this time, I'm gonna expect these debates to be badass. Versus here, I expect some little struggle, especially as many of you have not done this before. So that was a smart choice. Also, it gives us an opportunity to debrief, which means that if you don't have anything or you don't know what to write for your final reaction paper, you can come and talk about it in class, get some ideas, get some snacks, thing along. Okay? But it also means before you enter your finals week, your study day, the actual work for you is done. I typically prefer this, but I also want to offer this since we don't have much time left in class yet. Emily.
I think I present the board.
Anyone who is presenting on that day will do that. So if you're presenting, email me. If you've already been assigned a presentation day, it's 12-4, 12-6, email me. You're gonna be assigned.
So, do I have to come on the 6th?
No, that's a great question. If you are team C and D, you do not, or excuse me, if you are not assigned on one of these times, you don't have to be here. You do not have to be here. But you can be here if you want to stay and watch, especially if you're team C and D and you want to see what happens with A and B. Come on.
Which groups?
Great. So Darkisha, Hayana, Tani, Nathan, you are team A. Team B, Bassem, Abdullah, Zach, and Jewel. C and D. So Madison, Emily, Wesley. What would you like to call your team? What did you call it? I'm not calling it the winning team, but I'll allow you to pick another name.
I was gonna say the winning team.
We're not, that's not allowed. Okay, but anyway,
Okay,
Jennifer.
How about the ganadores? That's winning in Spanish.
If you hadn't told me, I would have allowed you, and now I'm not going to allow you to do that. You cannot go in saying I am the winner.
Los vencedores. Oh, vencedores.
What does that mean, Madison?
No idea.
Not out there. Anyway, that's your team. Okay, this is gonna be, this is Team Trouble. And then Team D is Jennifer, Brian, Adrian, Thomas. Got it? Jalen. These are the issues. Do you want to participate in the debate, or do you want to do the alternative assignment?
She said I'm in Team Trouble.
Okay, so Jalen wants to be on Team Trouble with Emily. Okay. Now that means we're pretty much even, right? Yeah, we actually are. Great. Questions about the final from here? Yes. If you have more, that's great.
No, I
I'm already convinced you're gonna win when there's no winners. What do you have questions about?
Emily has a high level of confidence that will carry you very far into law school, and that's a great thing. Jewel, you have your hand? Yeah. You have O'Connor versus Ratcliffe. So team A and team B have the same case. You will both prepare. Day of, you will be split, or day of, it will be a coin toss on which side you take. Do you take pro or you take against? Same thing, C and D. On your time, your appointed time. Is everybody clear when they're expected to show up and what your assigned case is? Someone who is seated here take a photo of what I have written on the board and and send it to me, and then I will send a actual written version that is not chicken scratch. Actually, I'm just gonna take it myself as well, so I don't forget. Have to do this every semester. Never read my own handwriting. All right, so now that that's decided, let's move on to talk about your reading. We read the second part of Alice and Frida. So same thing as last time. I'm gonna keep the laptop because it's last time. But I am gonna turn this off because we don't need it anymore. Same thing as last time, as far as getting the conversation started. New information that we have learned about this case in the next part. Jewel already got her hand up, love that. That either surprised us, is new information. Jewel, hit me with it because I already saw your hand.
I'm very disturbed. How, the
All right.
video was portraying, Frida's death. They sliced her boy's white bosom. Why? Why are y'all romanticizing and sexualizing this lady's death?
Oh my God, such great points. All right, so the last time we left off, we were gonna talk about markers. We're gonna talk about first and foremost, the influence of media. So we'll talk way more about that, but specifically the description of the people involved and injuries. What else? Last time we talked about community separation, which we'll get to too. We want to just talk more about that. Jennifer.
I believe the term they used was female hysteria, even for shortness.
So let's
Correct.
say mental health issues. But of course, these are of the 1800s, right? What did we consider that? Jill, go ahead.
It's kind of an add-on to the mental health issues. Alice's mother had postpartum depression,
Mm-hmm.
so they like, oh, she's crazy just like her mom.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a
Genetic,
possibility.
mental health issues. What else?
Also take into account that during that time, mental health was not really known or like acknowledged, so they thought that it was.
What the hell is psychology? What are you talking about, right?
Yeah, so they thought that it was crazy or it was, witchcraft.
Which is also a problem. Why is that also a problem? Right? Who are witches?
You know,
What else are there?
Alright, so when it was talking about the female hysteria, it was talking about something that happened previously. And they, I remember what they said, it was the disease they called it something else, but not the same. They called it the person like.
Erotomania, yes.
Oh,
Mania. That should be nice. Anything else that struck us? Different.
The way the judge used the media, I think that is.
Her absence father, like, when it seemed they talked on it before, anything, like, before they were able to be like, oh, maybe yes, what about it? He's like, no, he's trying to, like, he steered the.
I thought it was kind of crazy how, well, not crazy, but they didn't, even try to mention the fact that they were two bookers, like, or even mention any type of, like, sexual interaction between them.
We didn't acknowledge the fullness of their relationship.
Yeah. Like, they didn't want to talk about it at all.
Put
They
that
felt
out
like,
here, as a failure to acknowledge. Anything else? We'll talk about these breaking down. Go ahead.
so when the judge did the attorneys media, so
Uh-huh.
the attorneys knew that the judge was going to look at the media, and they kept giving him little bits of information. in the media at the time, so they use that to their advantage.
Leaking information.
And forget about anybody talk to us.
Anybody else has something you want to? All right, this is a lot for the remainder of this class, so let's get to unpacking some of these things. First and foremost, we talked a little bit about this last time, and it is a big part of this next unit, so that's why our big part of this particular part of the story. So I do want to spend some time on this one. First and foremost, the influence of the media. How can you tell or tell me some of the ways in this particular case, the influence or the media is influenced by what was happening, or kind of how they got information, or vice versa? How did the media impact what was happening in the news? Let's talk through that. Wesley.
Well, like, anybody involved in the state executive, so like,
Right, how many people are members of that time? Not nearly as many as now.
so everybody wanna make an act themselves a play or just like be involved, so they start making up their own little story, tell the media, if it involved in any way, make the. So they say like, oh, I think version of this promotion is bad.
What is that? Keep your thoughts. Closeness to tragedy. How many times in the course of a bad incident happening have we seen people then go on to the media with various levels of connection to talk about their connection and how they think that person speak, right? And how, like, very far out does that get sometimes, right? Like that neighbor that we never actually spoke to, or our second grade teacher who remembers us as calm and quiet, or even if we're talking about some of the cases that we heard about as your presentations, the Menendez brothers, or the individuals responsible for the Columbine shooting. How many people reached out and wanted to say something about that then, right? Or think about any time you've experienced your own personal tragedy with no students experiencing your own personal tragedy. I'll give an example when I got diagnosed with cancer. When I was diagnosed with cancer, I did not make that information publicly available on any form of social media because I specifically did not want people doing this. But once the kind of news got out among people who like I went to high school with, a person that I went to high school with, we had a huge falling out senior year. We never spoke since then, but messaged me privately on Facebook to give me this long message about how much I meant to them, how they were so sorry about what happened or what was happening, and they were going to pray for me. Knowing what you know about me as a professor, how do you do that so bad? Not so well. If I haven't heard from you in 15 to 18 years, or however long it's been, or however long it was at that time, 10 years, whatever it was, and you're first reaching out to me only to talk to me about my tragedy, how genuine does that seem? Right? Now let's apply that same logic to this case. Is it very genuine of these people? Do they have a genuine interest other than just like, this is happening, it's really interesting, and I want to be part of it? But how much does that affect the narrative, right? How much did what they had to say affect what journalists said or what was believed about the case? Jules said a lot. What do you
What I think, closest to thought, I believe that they tend to reach out in that case just to make themselves known, to make themselves influential in the turnout of the case. What they say, even if they didn't know, Allison, you know, what they said is just word of mouth, and journalists need that every day.
Absolutely, because what's true about journalists that's not true about lawyers that we talked about before.
They say.
Exactly. Doesn't have to be true. Doesn't have to be true. You just have to have a person who's willing to say it and forward, which, as we talked about, absolutely affects it. And everybody who has that feeling, we do as individuals generally feel this. Like when something happens to somebody who we remotely know, we have a feeling of like, well, that's sad. That makes me feel a certain way. Some of us who are emotionally mature are like, that doesn't make me sad, but me and that person are not super close. I'm not gonna bother them. My feelings matter. Then there are those of us who are emotionally immature and will go to the first journalist or the first television reporter to tell every single thing that we knew about the person, how we personally can't believe this happened. What kind of collective conscience does that create? When the people who don't necessarily know anything, we know here with the defense strategy, the person who's most involved remains silent. We'll talk about why and all the issues surrounding that in a minute. But the people who are close to it remain silent. So the people who are distant from it are controlling the narrative. That makes sense to you?
And I feel
Right? Doesn't it? How does that not sound like politics, right? Explain what you mean by that, though.
I mean, you see a lot of like bickering, you know, like on media, people protesting in the streets. What's going on then?
Or they may not be personally affected by it, right? Which doesn't mean that there's not a good reason to protest, for sure, right? We can protest for good reasons, whether or not they personally affect us because we believe that it's right and just. Is that what these people are doing? No. But does it oftentimes, like you said, the people who are distanced, removed from it, then control the narrative? And the people who are most affected by it don't. Again, an incidence of power structures at play, even when they're not legally enforced. This is not legally enforced power structure. This is just one socially created, but it mimics what happens in the law so closely because those things are intrinsically tied to issues of social control. Go ahead.
Going off what you said, the person who actually knew, freedom, understand how he or she did not come forward with it, is because mainly going back to the people that didn't know them, they didn't have a guilty conscience, so they just spoke out on whatever.
Right.
The person that actually wouldn't actually knows every single detail, has a guilty conscience, and
Right.
can know that kind of information, so that way he doesn't either A, be labeled an accomplice of the matter,
Absolutely.
B, be labeled part of the matter, C, be labeled a triton of the matter.
Right. Or, potentially face criminal repercussions themselves. They don't want any of that. Or they don't want any of the negative attention associated with it.
Because they can't acquit Allison Quintus if they go and acquit the person.
And also, can you acquit anyone who's been found guilty in the court of public opinion? Not really. Once we've decided in the court of public opinion that someone's guilty, how often are we willing to change our mind? I literally wear a t-shirt usually every semester about the death penalty killed people and all their names are on the back. And it never fails whenever I wear that t-shirt. I get someone commenting about like how many people or I'm talking about how victims might feel when I wear that. But the reality is those are all individuals who are exonerated based on usually prosecutorial misconduct. But even in a situation where they have been declared either pre-humorously, meaning they've been exonerated from death row and released, or posthumously, they actually were executed and someone decided after the fact, yeah, we should not have done that. Someone's still in the court of public opinion. Releasing it. So if that's true of what happens legally, how true is it when we don't even have formal charges about a person and there's no real reason, like getting them off death row or getting them out of prison to prove them innocent? Is there a big push to do that? Is there a big push to hold any of these individuals who just want to be post tragedy accountable for what they did or have the influence that they had in this case? We saw it happen in other cases that Wesley talked about. What was it? OJ. How much of the court of public opinion have to do with that, right? And how many people came forward to talk about OJ? You could literally just like hold a camera and people just like line up.
And he was found in the school.
And he's guilty.
And more people think he's guilty than.
So now we're public opinion is completely switched. Now we've got him guilty because we know what we're for. All right. The influence of media. What about Jules talking about the description of them? Did any of you have any issues with the way that the individuals involved in the trial were described by the media? Opposite images. What do you mean by that?
So in one, I'm sorry, I was really tired when I read this. One, she was described as a very pure individual, and the other one, what she was described as a person.
What else?
Are we talking about like when it's the white bull stuff?
Mhm.
And there was another one just said the white man, it just did describe the period.
On the purity of who?
What?
Of both of them, right? We weren't concerned that Alice literally almost decapitated her lover. She was still white and pure. That's how we described her in the media, right? What impact does that have on the mind or the court of public opinion? Keeping in mind this is a Civil War era, Memphis, deeply segregated South.
It's like in most everything, they just, oh, poor Alice, you crazy, or Frida, she just got killed by the crazy woman, like.
What those images, when you hear those words, what images or what feelings are brought to the surface for you? We do think theory, right? Which is inspires us to be empathetic if someone is a pure victim, right? Typically how we associate children, maybe innocence. Right? Doesn't white usually represent the color, or the color of innocence is usually represented by white? The color white, right? So that creates, again, more, contributes more the influence of media in developing a narrative, just how they write about people. And let's go back real quick on specifically the media at this time period. What was media at this time period? Huh? How many? There's 3 different newspapers, right? How many of them were connected to individuals in the case? Huh?
All of them.
And which one are they, who specifically were they connected to?
The appeal at the Ponchi Avalanche, doesn't it?
The judge.
Who else?
Weren't
The
they
judge?
connected to her father?
So if you're media, the entire person telling the story is controlled by this judge, who is friends with the defense attorney and father, who also all are friends with people on the local newspaper. How likely is it, do you think, that they probably had a very heavy hand in shaping the public narrative about this? What do you think that current defense attorneys would pay to have a judge and papers all on their side for a case? What do you think? Jennifer.
They would love to do that, and that's kind of what Alex Murdaugh did in his, defense, and now they have everyone on their side saying that the clerk was. She wasn't supposed to be talking to the jury.
Oh, she was having improper jury communications, yes. What about people who are already very famous, who have the ability to control narratives through the information that they release? Not particularly recent, let's think more recent. Okay, right. Huh? Oh my gosh, right? Trump has his own entire media outlets, right? And if he didn't have them, Fox News is certainly controlling his sub-informant, aren't they? In some circles. But right, controls a lot of what is released about him. And then as an official gets to make statements in a public way, does the FBI or anybody who's investigating actually close to the case, are they legally entitled to speak on the issues? Just like the prosecutor in this case, right? Was he legally entitled to speak on the issues? No, he's not. No, he's not. Then who controls the data? These people who were already in power before any of this happened and had major connections before any of this happened, all controlled the narrative, all controlled the court of public opinion, and pretty much dictated it. And then what happened? Let's talk more about the judges and the attorneys. What was that dynamic like? Let's talk about the judge. You might have some thoughts on the judge.
He just wanted power.
How do we know he just went down?
Control, he threatened to throw women out for nothing.
The judge's influence. Because the media reported on everything that he did, right? He threw women out. For what? What did he throw them out for? Simply because they were women? Why throw them out? What was the excuse he gave? Emotional outbursts, which kind of sounds a lot like what? And which is interesting, right? Why did they already here in the first place? Why were all these pious white women in strike? It's delicate information. Why were they there? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, because they felt that they had a spiritual connection to them, but they felt that they wanted to get their word out and say that we met.
As pure white women, we are all the same, right? We speak to one another. We are here in front of the judge. You're having an emotional outburst because that us. Us. Assuming that we fell in love with the woman and intended to transition into living as a man and didn't happen to improve her. That could be us. Right? So relatable. But also it's become what it's now a spectacle, right? This is now entertainment for Memphis City. Isn't that true in other cases that are high profile? What are we talking about with OJ? How much did he dominate the news cycle? Literally, the NBA playoffs were happening. I don't know if you guys know how big of a deal that is, generally speaking. It's a big fucking deal. Okay? NBA playoffs were playing. And even ESPN switched off to follow OJ driving 40 miles an hour down I-5. Entertainment? Are you not entertained? That was both a rhetorical and literal question. Aren't you entertained by that? That's fascinating. That's gonna be something to talk about at work tomorrow, right? And the same thing for the entire time. It was a pretty much a 9-month-long drama series. You know how we do a season of White Lotus or a season of Game of Thrones gets dropped, and that's all anybody does for that brief period of time. Imagine that happening, but it's a real case, really happening, real people in a courtroom, in an actual place, on a movie set, for 9 straight months, and it airs every single day, all day.
There would be those that put in their soap operas and then it gets commented on, they got upset in the trial.
Weren't these women very upset when they got kicked out? Why do they want to be there and be entertained?
Them, they want drama and people entertainment.
I think this also speaks to an issue that we generally have in society. We're talking about closeness to tragedy or what we find entertaining. How many of you have watched Law and Order or Criminal Legal Lines, CSI, any kind of that bullshit? Right? So I read a really interesting piece recently. I was talking about how people who go to their favorite shows, not their favorite shows, but the shows that you can go to sleep to. How in the world do you go to sleep to an ongoing criminal case where sexual assault or violent physical assault or even homicide is a part of the story? How do you sleep to them?
Because it doesn't take some sort of effect.
Right.
Just become numb to it.
You become numb because we as a society see it so much. And the other reality is that most people, or for people who are doing that, engaging in that, like I'm going to sleep to Law and Order, doesn't affect them. That's never going to be a part of their reality. So these emotional women and all these people who are there, that's never part of their reality, but they're getting there to see the privilege of just what? What's their purpose there? What purpose do they serve in the overall scheme? None whatsoever. But they need to be there, to be close to the tragedy. And honestly, aren't they then going out and doing the same things the media is doing, talking about what happened, right? And now they're getting to add on to it. They're getting to talk more and more about it. What does that do when we're talking about the kind of like additive effect of these processes and the things that are true about this time? Does that make it easier to challenge, more difficult?
You get all these little competing stories and everything within that interpretation, you're gonna get a story that's completely different, like the telephone game.
Right? We're playing telephone. Telephone is an effective method to communicate. How many people have ever done that where even if it's just like between you and your siblings, you tell your sibling one thing and the next thing you know your mom is saying, I actually literally had to talk to my brother's wedding. I messed up and forgot to invite my sister to a key event. And then all of a sudden the narrative that I got through my Ring camera, once you public Ring cameras, of course, you're getting talking mad shit about you. It got to my mother that I had excluded my sister from all of the pre-wedding events. My sister lived in California. But I purposely excluded her from all wedding related events, and I hadn't invited her to anything in the last year for which she was living in Memphis. Which is happening first, but that's how it started, from my sister's version of telling the event to this family member to this family member. And now this is the thing my mom is saying on my front porch. That's my family. We like each other. We're actually a close family. Not, why was it Joe's responsibility? Great fucking question. I had that question from my mom whenever she has to come on and to call me, because she knows I'm mad. In my family, you know, you don't call me if I'm mad, because it's not gonna go well for you. So you're gonna wait as long as possible or until I contact you. In this case, you guys will wait as long as possible, because if I don't feel like I did anything bad, I'm not reaching out. And I didn't. Go ahead.
Going back kind of what you said about.
Yeah.
Criminal like shows.
Yes,
and all
yes,
that
yes,
stuff.
yes.
I watched a lot of white collar.
Right?
White collar and blue bloods, and I feel like white collar has affected me in how I perceive things like the criminal aspect and from judging aspect.
Great,
because,
talk more about that. How, in what way?
in what way is that, how we use a CI who's committed past crimes
Mhm.
and how he has a copycat or he is so like, well known in different fields that he's become useful in how we employ them. But we are so blinded to the fact that we're giving him access to our systems,
Yeah.
our leeways and the ins and outs of our judicial system and how he can escape that
Yep.
in the long run, because our CIs are playing the long game with us.
Mhm.
So Neil Caffrey in the end, he escaped, like he performed like a well thought out plan from the suit to the exchange to his rival's gun not going off.
Mhm.
And to where his CI like informant, his CI recipient
Mhm.
would be like shocked to see that he's dead, he's gone. Because in the show, Neil and Patrick, they were the ones who they trusted each other.
Right.
And Neil played it so well to where he escaped. He made himself look dead when in fact he just took a pill
Mhm.
that made his heart stop beating for 6 hours and made it seem like he was pronounced dead. When in fact he had escaped and fled to Paris without any known like sighting of him.
And also, these aren't based on true stories, so like, these stories aren't like completely made up and you're thinking, oh, that's never gonna happen. No, it doesn't happen.
He didn't get happened because I read.
Oh, but it's based on real case.
Yeah, I found real case because the Neil Catholic is a real person, this did happen. And he has escaped and he's still never been caught. Till this day.
Still not. And we gave that people that insight today, we gave it to them. We gave them the insight. We gave them the insight. So what does that also do for these women? They're also picking up on while they're sitting there for them. Maybe some expectations, what's going to be required of them. Maybe they're picking up on, I have an idea, maybe I'll stab my husband, this is my opinion, how it might be offended. Hey. You had an abusive husband, and you were sitting there, and you're like, Wouldn't that give you a couple ideas? And if you can have an emotional outburst and have to be hysterical enough. You don't even need to question whether or not you're guilty, right? All right. What else did the judge do? The judge didn't just, let little snippets slip to the newspaper, which he absolutely did. And the attorneys absolutely did. What else did the judge do? Specifically to accommodate media. He renovated an entire courthouse during the Civil War era to accommodate more people in his courtroom, specifically reporters. What message does that send? What do you, when you hear that, and if you were to hear that a local judge here in Shelby County decided to renovate his or her courtroom in order to expand it and allow more more journalistic presence at, let's say, Eliza Fletcher, the trial of Eliza Fletcher's, what do you think about it?
Well, you did.
Why would you do this?
I call it.
doing it for publicity, wants his name out there.
It's like he invited people from.
It wasn't like he did, he literally did. Yeah, in fact, he said, I'm so sorry, I don't have enough room for you. Let me use tax dollars of all of these citizens to expand my courtroom so that more journalists can sit in for one trial. Is that efficient use of government money?
Because for one, it was one quick and just point-to-point trial.
For a trial, right? A ton of witnesses, there was literally plenty of eyewitnesses, there was a confession. Written evidence, letters, pretty open and closed, what the prosecutor would say, open and closed case, right? Okay,
Not only that, but they were in the cell next right next to a man who had literally just done the same thing to his wife. His wife had been sleeping with somebody else and he killed her, but his crime was like overlooked.
so we know that. Did the people in the media know that or reading the media know that? No, because what was the question they all had about Lily? If she didn't know anything. What was the question? If she was really an innocent bystander, what was their question? Based solely on the fact that they shared a cell.
What did he feel?
Hmm?
What did he say?
Let me go back, I think you asked this question wrong. Remember that the judge and the people involved are slipping information to the newspapers, and the newspapers slip out the detail that Alice and Lily are sharing a bunk. And that Alice, or excuse me, Lily didn't, Lily's accused of being the accomplice and knowing about the murder, and that she didn't request a different cell. What did the public take of that information? What did they make of it? Rachel?
They took like, oh, she didn't request it, we said she must have been in on it, like.
By proximity, right? She is guilty by proximity. Not only was she physically there day of, but now that she's incarcerated, she is staying in the same room as. What was true that was not published in the media that you all know. Didn't know what was happening. Well, one, Lily was very checked out, mentally speaking, from all we can gather, but what was also true? Specifically, what was true of the logistics of the jail? That conveniently did not make it into newspapers. Oh, I'm sorry? No, she was not bailed out. She served, or she was eventually, but she did stay for quite some time. She was eventually at least, but before that, there were.
Wasn't the fact that there was somebody else in the other cell?
Yes. And someone said it earlier, but I hadn't gotten there yet. But yes, he was literally in the cell next to them, and he had been accused of murdering his wife. So if your option is, as Lily, is being in a cell with my friend that I've known for my entire life and has never attempted to cause me harm, despite the fact that she did brutally decapitate our other friend in front of me, her, or a man who is just accused of killing his wife. Who are you picking? You picking Alice or that guy?
We remember Alice had a name.
Right? She had pick her battle, right? If you were a woman in that situation, would you feel comfortable sharing a cell with a man point blank period? No. Men said no, assuming that is how you identify. Although I'm not gonna try to make any assertions. We haven't had that conversation as a professor or individual. So, but anyway, presumptive. Would you guys want to? Men, do you want to stay in a cell with someone who was just accused of stabbing his wife? Let me ask you something. Do you think people who are incarcerated get a choice? So did Lily choose to stay in that room? But the influence of the media said she chose to stay there. There's another room there. What does that then create in the mind of court of public opinion? We said it before. She's guilty. Guilty by association. Continued association, right? It wasn't just enough that she was friends with her the first time I got her charged. It's that she continues to stay in on it. So that must mean that she did it. Let's apply that same logic to the day. First and foremost, Would this be able to happen today? Would two people who are charged with acting in the same crime be allowed to share a cell? Why not?
Because they're charge partners and they don't want the story getting. Yeah.
There is too high of a risk. And there's also too high of a security risk, because what is also true about when we have defendants, co-defendants with each other? What is often the prosecutor or the police trying to do?
Trying to turn them against each other.
Do you think that might create some tension in the bedroom? Right? That's the exact reason we actually don't require spouses to testify on each other. We consider the marital union to be one of the most sacred in our society. Ergo, to protect the most sacred of institutions in our society, you never have to tell on your spouse in any criminal proceeding. You can if you want to, but you do not have to. No one can ever make me tell any of Dr. McCuddy's secrets, and no one can ever make Dr. McCuddy tell my secrets. Ever. Because we have a marriage license. That we just lived together for the last 10 years. Are we allowed to get away with that? So when I say marriage is a privilege, do you understand what I mean? I mean, it provides you legal protection, real legal protection. Do you know any other situation or institution in the world in which you are not allowed to tell on someone when you know incriminating evidence? You don't have to tell on yourself, but can you think of any other relationship or any other dynamic in which one person is permitted to hold the secrets of another person, even when faced with criminal prosecution? That's true. I have it with clients, defense attorney and client privilege. Do prosecutors have that privilege already? They do not. Defense attorneys, people with the accused, representing the accused have that privilege. So my favorite way to communicate that to, especially when I was working with juveniles, to get them to understand how serious that privilege is, or the right of confidentiality is you can tell me literally anything right now, and it is my literal job to not tell on you. In fact, I'm the only person in the world that no matter what you tell me, I cannot go and tell anybody else until you tell me it's okay to do so. If you have an alibi, I can't tell the judge about the alibi until you tell me that I can tell the judge about the alibi. If you have a witness, I can't tell anybody until you tell me it's okay to object to that. That is how serious confidentiality between defense attorneys and clients are. That's how serious it is between marriage. You don't have to. Don't have to. Did Lily enjoy that at all? Did anyone in this case enjoy that at all? Their secrets die out all the time, right? And no privileges to protect them. So going back to the issues of codependence and filming, so that is considered such a problem that when we're trying to pit each other against each other, that's literally why they are required to stay in separate bunks and sometimes on separate floors, depending on the nature of the charges. Because we are so concerned that our prosecutorial or investigative attempts to turn them on each other might actually result in a physical conflict resulting in a homicide. They are physically barred from staying with each other. Knowing that now, what sense does this make? And do we think this maybe had some influence on how we continue, or issues like this? Do we think that probably had some influence on the policies that we have today? Absolutely it did. Absolutely it did. The city of Memphis is very lucky that neither Alice or Lily made it or attempted any kind of violence while in so, because if they had, who would have been responsible for the death of that person? The city of Memphis. Because she was in, both of them were under their care and control, which is why we charge correctional officers or we sue the city in cases that we're seeing, like coming from 201 Poplar, where there are 40 people dying. That's what we're charging them. And if you're charged, you have custody of this person. You are supposed to make sure that they are safe. I know you may not want to because they're accused of crime, you may not like it, but it's your fucking job. And if you fail so miserably at your job that someone dies, or someone dies 50 fucking times, there's a problem, right? These are the exact reasons that these policies we now see exist. We didn't see them exist for people to protect them then, they now exist to protect people all the time. Specifically, the one comment I want to make on this particular issue is it's even harder for women who are confined because there are fewer options. That remains true today. In in the Justo, what was called the Justo, in the Justo, which was like 8 floors of individuals who were incarcerated, guess how many of those floors were devoted to women? This is pre-trial detention, so people who were in jail prior to their charges being heard. Guess how many floors were devoted to women? None. All the women served time at a different institution that you had to drive out of town to get to at, called MSI. It was a medium security institution, that's the name MSI. And it wasn't on lockdown all the time. That was where they stayed. So they only got that option, which was really shitty for a lot of women because that jail was way grosser, had way less nice facilities, was way older, had way more issues, but they didn't get a choice in the option. Same thing when we consider things about, how many women's prisons do you think there are in Tennessee? Huh? Not too many. How many? So if you are confined as a woman and you are not close to your prison, is your family take care of? Are there many options that you can ask to have you transferred so I can see my family more? This issue still persists. This issue, and it's still often used to create the same rhetoric that it was around these times. Because what was the rhetoric about Lily, right? She was involved, she was an accomplice, right? What do we say about mothers who are routinely absent? Don't participate in their child's life, or can't participate in their child's life.
Neglect, child neglect.
They've neglected them, they might be abusive. What about people who have parents who are incarcerated? What do we generally feel about them as parents? They're not great parents. Or great role models. They're absent. So now knowing that there are two prisons, and that this is true where I practice as well. There were two prisons, female prisons in Missouri. And the closest one was like a 9-hour drive to St. Louis. So what does that mean for the comparative realities of a mother or a father? Who gets viewed as more absent based solely on where they are incarcerated? The mother. Why? Logistical issues like distance. But fathers you might be able to see more frequently because there are many more male prisons. I don't even know how many male prisons there are in Tennessee. To be honest with you, there are a lot. And I believe last budget included building another one. So if that's the case, how much easier is it for your family to get your children to you? Comparatively speaking. Much easier comparatively speaking. Again, comparatively speaking. That is not to at all suggest that it is easy to get into prison on a visit. I have done it, I have foster kids in custody. It is very fucking difficult. All the time. But is it much more difficult for women? Yes. So then what does that mean about our overall narrative? Remember the conversation we were having earlier about the way we view women and the way we view men and the expectations we hold them to in society? Would you agree or disagree that this is yet another example of how we structure? We use the word logistics and the fact that there could possibly have another option. Are there other options than just building 2 women's prisons? What might be another option? Instead of just having 2 prisons, what if we had lots of smaller ones? What if we did that? What if we allowed people to stay longer in jail if they could stay in the location of their family? Also, by the way, they do this for juveniles as well. Do you know how many juvenile facilities there are?
What's the aspect of, since they're going to female prisons, do they like mix in the juveniles with the adults?
Great question. In both male and female prisons, if you have been a juvenile, if you were adjudicated as a juvenile and you were sentenced to a term of years in prison, do you serve by yourself or do you serve with the rest of the population? You serve with the rest of the population. And if you're a kid, how are you going to communicate with your family? Because there's usually only like one facility that's large, that's holds all children, because we don't have that many people who are incarcerated. In the Division of Youth Services, usually only like 1, maybe 2 in a city. So what does that mean for kids who are trying to do it? People like Alice and Lily, who were 17, 18, 19. They're gonna have the ability to reach out. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And so many of those rules about corrections are used to create narratives about prisoners, about their guilt, about their ability to be rehabilitated. I speak on this specifically, again, I told you guys I've read this book a million times, I'm probably gonna recite it out of reading in one class. But it's the memoir of Stanley T.P. Williams, the leader of the co-founder of the Crips. And he specifically spends so much of the later part of his book talking about how many instances of they're called kites. It's essentially an anonymous complaint or tip to correctional officials that some activity, criminal activity is about to happen in the prison. And how many he received over the course of his entire duration in prison, but specifically after his radical transformation where he started to write children's books, where he had a complete spiritual evolution, and started to really turn, I don't want to say his life around, because obviously he was on death row and was executed. He did turn his life around for himself, and that was to him the most important thing. But those allegations continued. And if you look at his file, what would you think about him as true? Did he have a spiritual revolution? Based on the file? No, he was not a troublemaker. Did anybody know that he actually had never spent time in prison before he went to prison for the murders that he was eventually executed for? But every single correctional officer knew him before he got there. They had heard of him. He was subject to certain kinds of drugging, to certain kinds of medical treatment, and certain kinds of protocols that no other person in prison was subject to. That might create a narrative in the public that he was a really big, scary threat, right? But if he had no disciplinary infractions and not a single person left prison saying Stanley T.P. Williams beat the living shit out of me or tried to put me in prison, do we think that's true? That's also why I wanted to talk about specifically this one, because if we don't know what's happening, it's very easy for the powers that be to create a narrative. And didn't they? Didn't the judge create a narrative? Do you think the judge knew about the circumstances in the jail? Yeah, absolutely. Did he conveniently let that detail slip so that the paper could correct themselves and get it right? No, he did not. He continued to let that narrative exist. Again, a power being someone in the legitimate legal system using their power, their influence to continue and perpetuate a disparate treatment or perpetuate misinformation that then grossly influences the outcome of the trial. A trial in which he is very much anticipating is going to be a spectacle, right? Let's move on a little bit. That gets a little bit into these. We talked about, or we haven't yet talked about community separation, so we'll save that for next time because I think the IDA chapter will come up. Let's talk about mental health issues for just a little bit. Then we don't have a ton of time left. What do you think about generally this generation's approach or this era's approach to mental health? What? Go ahead.
This generation's issue on mental health is that mental health chronic hysteria, not because they thought this mass hysteria, there was something wrong, the devil had a hold on you. Yes. Because going back to the purity of white women, if they were seen as having mental health or psychotic or anything like that, oh, the devil has a hold on her. If we take her to church, have her cleansed, have her baptized again, she'll be clean.
She'll be clean. You can clean her again with the spirit of the holy. I don't know how that says. I didn't pay attention in church clearly. Julie, go ahead.
They also, once you were crazy, busy.
Isn't it?
You're unfit. Alice's mother, when she had
Yes.
depression, she being unfit as a wife and mother, like.
Unfit wife and mother. And what happened to her? Where was she? Was she present? Physically in the home? Where was she during this time? Huh?
She in Western State.
The equivalent of that. She was in a care facility for individuals who were deemed to be insane, criminally insane, or to be kind of be beyond repair. She physically was not even present for when this happened. Go ahead, Leslie.
Western State.
Oh, and then what was it?
Yes.
I think that's what it's called now. I don't know if that's what it's called.
No, that's what it's called back then.
Oh, cool.
Yep.
Sometimes they don't change the name. That's how you can tell how old and racist they are. All right, Western State. She's been there and spent her life there after being diagnosed with what we would call postpartum depression. For those of you who may have depression or anxiety symptoms, how would you feel if your spouse, because how did she get there? Did she say, I'm not well, I want to go?
She was just had a baby and was her people. dealing with it, like.
She had a baby, deal with it, and who, what do you mean when you say her people, who specifically?
That was the household and that's around.
Yeah, they all testified and said, no, it's specifically who was the biggest advocate that she was not mentally well. Her husband. Really easy to get rid of a wife that's driving you fucking nuts, right? Oh my god, after the baby, she just went hysterical. Can't do anything with her.
She's crying all the time.
She just cries, she won't take care of the child, hysteria, right? Is this, do we see how this is yet another example of, in this particular circumstance, how, like we're talking about in defense strategy and how we'll talk about with Alice, men who were in charge make the decisions, create the narrative, and that becomes the truth, the reality, and forevermore for the people, even though they had no say in it. Do we think that anybody who is postpartum needs to spend time in a mental health institution necessarily? Huh?
Kids don't make it okay.
If they do, definitely not their child's whole life.
For the rest of their life? Once you're considered to be crazy by your husband, you're cast aside for the rest of your life, and now he's allowed to do what? Remarry. What else?
Tell your child it's over
Tell your child any other story about what happened? What might that do to any child's psyche? Let's just put Alice off the table. What might that do to any child's in development? Do you think they're gonna have good, normal, healthy relationships? Do you think they're gonna have normal, instant relationships? Do you think that they might have some issues with people who are women if they have a mother figure who is absent? Do you think they might also then have some, I don't want to say issues, but they might see their father in a much different light? Because who's controlling the narrative about him? He is, right? So might you, I don't know, look up and want to embody or idolize that person? Maybe. A lot of children do with their parents, right? Our parents are our heroes, some of us. My mom is, biological dad, not so much. Right? But that's what we do. And then we use that female hysteria, meaning postpartum depression that happens to a lot of women. We use that to create this concept that didn't even exist yet, but of genetically passed down mental health. If you generally question, you know, any psychological condition that can be passed down genetically speaking. Not a genetic, or it is a genetic condition, it is not a psychological.
Oh, sorry.
Not also.
Alzheimer's.
That is psychological, it's actually still considered a medical condition because your brain matters to your brain.
Dementia.
Also
APD.
considered a medical condition.
BPD.
Bipolar disorder.
No.
So borderline personality disorder, bipolar disorder, and schizophrenia. How many of you think those are genetically passed down? Go ahead. Or have a genetic component to them? Be honest, it's fine. Not true. Not true. How did that become to be a part of our conversation about mental health issues? I will give you a hint. It's the exact same way that it happened here. How many times do we see children whose parents are bipolar, schizophrenic, or have borderline personality disorder, or just experience the reality of borderline personality disorder, the reality of bipolar disorder, the reality of schizophrenia is almost always they are connected with very early what are called adverse childhood experiences or ACEs. Very, very early and extreme. We're not talking about you got spanked or something like that. That is an adverse childhood experience. However, we're not talking about something as simple as that. We might be talking about years about food or consistency, living in cars. What do you think that does to human development and brain wise? Does that support human healthy development as far as your brain is concerned? But what happens when your brain doesn't develop healthily? You develop unhealthy coping mechanisms. Does anybody know how you diagnose borderline personality disorder? Actually, any mental health disorder. Does anybody know how you diagnose those? Go ahead.
There's a list of symptoms that have to be displayed.
Correct. It is a list of symptoms that have to be consistent depending on which particular psychological diagnosis we're talking about for a specified period of time without relenting. Do you get symptoms? So that's confusing a lot of times, because we see symptoms and we think symptoms are medically related, right? That must mean genetic. What are symptoms?
Psychological symptoms?
What are symptoms, period?
Things that repeat.
Things that repeat. There are observations we can make, right? About how we think, how we feel, what's generally happening. There's observations, right? Does an observation give you a genetic code? Do you have to consult anybody's genetic makeup when you diagnose them according to a DSM? Then you just check and you're looking for if they meet the diagnostic criteria, right? What about that says medical to you? So to compare it, what would tests look like if I wanted to be diagnosed, if we were trying to get a diagnosis for cancer? What might we do? Are they just gonna look at my symptoms and say, bloated, irritable, yep, must be cancer. Is that what they're gonna do? What do they do? Blood draws. What else do they do? X-rays, MRIs, tube down my throat. We might do surgery. We have to do a biopsy. All things that are going to definitely check it off. We're not just looking at symptoms and checking the box. So is a psychological evaluation, or is it possible, knowing that and that alone, to conclude that psychological symptoms can be genetic? Are you using any kind of genetic test to test for them? All right, we're on time. Great discussion today. We will pick up on Monday real quick before you leave.